Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. You're listening to the B2C Lead Gen Podcast. My name is Daniel Hopewell, here with Simon Delaney, and this is episode 95, Tactics to Squeeze the Value from Every Lead. So the idea today is pretty simple. We're going to talk through some tactics and give you ways to make incremental improvements at every stage of the lead buying process. And obviously when we add all these together, we can combine to make an overall big difference to the results. That's the plan. So we'll talk through these tactics today and hopefully give you some ideas. Simon, let's dive straight in. Some tactics to squeeze the value from every lead.
So I think this is really interesting. It's just, we've talked before about like binary approaches to things, like dedupe verification and stuff, and it's more nuanced. And this is a kind of classic example of that. So what we're going to run through with these tactics is different ways to think about how you can handle leads and potentially find more value in them that you're losing otherwise. Exactly as you mentioned. So from the top, number one, make sure no leads get lost in the verification process. So we've got a client who it's interesting. We've got one client who does this correctly, and we had a new client onboarded recently who does this incorrectly. And I said to them, you need to start thinking about how you're doing this. And this is, they were receiving leads in, and they're going to be contacting them by telephone, but they were rejecting them when they had a bad email. But I was like, you need to bypass the bad email. Don't worry about that. If telephone is your primary contact method, just carry on as you were. Obviously, it's a different deal if it's a bad telephone number, but a good email address. And this can be like single digits that have been missed. They were collecting data from their site that we weren't impacting. So there was no syntax checks or live verification we could put on. But what I suggested they build is, it's like the idea of almost progressive profiling. Email that user with the good data that you have with a link to a form that asks them to fill this in, then update the original lead and deliver it at that point. And so what you're really trying to identify is fake leads, which are, this is some sort of Mickey Mouse fraud data that we're never going to be able to contact anyway, and people who are legitimate, interested in your product or service, that want to be contacted, but for some reason you can't. You don't want to let them slip through the cracks. All you're doing is killing sales if you do. So you need to build these processes in place to make sure that you can get the data that you need to be able to contact them. That's number one. Number two, qualify they can be a customer. This is easy, right? Like, oh, we can only sell to women in Kent, whatever. If you're getting leads in of legitimate people who are potentially interested in the product or service that you have, but they can't be your customer, do they know someone who can be? Do you know what I'd do in that instance? Create a unique link per person who came in that we can't work with, send it to them and say, really sorry, we can't work with you. But if you know someone who can, please get them to fill this link in and we'll pay you if they become a customer or for the lead or whatever. Because there's some sort of like desire they've had to interact with your brand. So you may as well make the most of it. You can choose just to reject the lead and go, oh, we can't work with them. Well, how about you think of this differently and think, well, hold on. There's something we're saying that's resonating with them. They could actually be like a salesperson for us, and they've got their own network of people, can get in contact with them. Or could they be a customer in the future? Like, I don't know, you can only sell to women over 35, and someone who's 34 and comes in. Do you know what 99% of people do is reject that data? They don't think, hold on, in a year, if we like keep this person warm on the boil and do some nurturing with them, they could become a customer. They just reject the lead.
So to clarify, this podcast is about keeping women in Kent nice and warm.
I don't see gender.
I get you saying. Like, it didn't have to be a year. It literally be the day before someone's preemptively putting the details in because they like to man network.
I see this all the time, and you just look at it and you think, rather than thinking like you're saving the CPL and can reject it, why don't you think like, holy shit, what if 20% of these people might become a customer at some point in the future and we're rejecting them all? Anyway, or if it's a persistent issue, as in you're constantly getting people in that can't be a customer through qualifying them. So I don't know, like you can't sell to people in Northern Ireland, but like, 30% of your leads are in Northern Ireland. Either you've got like a messaging problem or positioning, do you need to change that in some way? Or can you find a partnership with someone somewhere where you can actually just pass the leads on to them, offer a similar service or product? So rather than this like person just going into the ether that comes into like a CRM or a lead management system and it's like, you reject it and go, we can't work with them. It becomes, okay, we can't work with these people, but we can build a partnership with this company that I think might be able to help them. And guess what? They might even pay us for the referral. And considering 30% of our leads look like this, we can make more money by doing it. No one ever thinks like this. I think, if you want to squeeze the value out of every lead, this is the sort of thing that you need to be thinking about. These type of partnerships, even though you're the lead buyer, you might even be the brand. That doesn't mean you can't create partnerships with other brands where you're helping them and helping them help the customers that have come to you. The other thing is de-dupe. So I won't go fully into the details of de-duplication. We did an entire podcast around it that was like 20-30 minutes long. But if you want to squeeze the value from every lead that you're receiving and not necessarily reject them like in this binary fashion and actually realize value behind the data, you need to check the intent levels of the lead before you potentially reject it through a de-dupe. Is it low intent when it came in the first time? Now it's high intent. If you can contact them now immediately, you might get a different outcome than you did from the low intent stuff that you got before. What's the sales cycle that the lead is coming into for de-dupe? If it's like a lot of companies do 1 month sales cycle, rest it for a month, put it into another sales cycle for a month. What if it comes in again in that month period right at the beginning that you're resting that data before contacting again? This person's coming as a really hot lead and you're not going to do anything for 30 days. I honestly know companies that do this. And also you look at the conversion rate by source. So it's true, right? You could de-dupe on something that's come from like a low intent source, but suddenly because of the relationship this user has, and if you use their messaging or your partnership with them when they're coming as a new lead from a higher intent source, it can lead to greater sales. So like a classic example is someone's coming as a co-reg lead for 50p 3 weeks ago, and then suddenly some brand that lead gen partner that's got like a really strong brand that you've got almost an affinity deal with, the lead comes in again, you've got the opportunity to either go, okay, we're going to treat it like a fresh lead, and this other lead only costs us 50p anyway, this other one might be £10, £20, whatever, and we know that we've got a really good chance of converting this person right now by not rejecting this lead as a de-dupe. So that's a way to think about how to squeeze the value from every lead rather than just taking this like binary rejection approach.
Well, I was going to say that's the word actually that pops into my head. Obviously, we're talking about these granular tactics, and I don't know if you will do some more as we go through, but it's quite clear on this straight away that they've all this common theme of not being binary and looking at those little. I guess sometimes people worry a lot about automating everything as much as possible and making sure that no frauds entering and all those things are actually necessary and great and have to do all that kind of stuff. But I guess at a certain point, you can't just say, right, that's all in place now. I'm just going to sort of kick back and leave it going. You've got to sort of keep constantly making sure that these things are happening. Like I say, making sure that it's not just a case of yes or no. Actually, there are exceptions to all of these different things, and you constantly have to refine it. And I guess the whole point of this podcast is we're trying to find ways for people who are buying leads and trying to make sales in a time where people are feeling under more pressure than ever to get as much value and much return on investment, to find different ways to sort of, like I say, squeeze that value out of it. So it's almost like all these tactics are actually just little ways to go into what's already there and just refine it slightly and get that extra sort of value that is almost getting lost in the process.
I think as well, because ultimately we're dealing with people here, right? Like that's what leads are, or we're dealing with people's personal data. It's really easy to take like a binary approach with data because like you were saying, you can apply rules really quickly and you can just sort of set and forget and whatever. But when you were dealing with a person face to face, it never happens like that, right? It's everything's more custom, it's more personalized. You can understand problems, nuances, whatever else. And really what we're talking about is, can we apply that to someone's data in the same way that you would do to the person? And nobody takes this approach, but it's, ultimately, like, whether it's ones and zeros or whether it's, our person, they're both still people. And so they live and breathe, and they have their own mindset and their own way of doing things and whatever. And so if you can start to apply that to their data, you stand a much better chance of creating a genuine connection with them.
That's a really interesting way of thinking about using that earlier example. Imagine you ran a shop and you were selling whatever it was to women over 35, like you said. And a woman came to the shop and she's like, oh, I'm 35 tomorrow. You wouldn't be like, all right, I won't see you ever again. Say, like, come back tomorrow.
Yeah. But like, you can go get out of my shop and I'm not paying for you to come in either. I want a refund from the shopping centre that owns this building.
Like, sometimes it's quite funny to sort of translate this to real life examples, and you realize how ridiculous some of these things can actually be. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
But it's and the thing is, this, and maybe we need to talk more about it. We don't do as much of it on the podcast where we talk about transparency and building connections with people, because we talk sometimes about it still now, but like this podcast is about tactics and things. But the ultimate tactic is basically treat people like people, not like their data, I think. And build this sort of personalized approach, help them be like, try and create a genuine connection. Don't just see them as bits of money and tiddlywinks that are floating into your CRM or dialer or lead management system or whatever. And that is the ultimate hack of all. But
like, we'll say that deserves its own podcast. We'll do that.
That can do its own podcast. Okay, so to keep on this, the fast-paced, how to squeeze as much value from your data as humanly possible to women over 35. No, not the last bit. Okay, this one, we were just talking about this right before we jumped on the podcast. It was like, I coined this phrase I love now. We need to do a podcast around this. Do you want to reject a lead or lose a customer? And what we're talking about is suppression, right? Suppressing someone's details because they're a current customer. And I was just saying to you, we were just talking about and said, can you imagine if we had an external lead generator generating leads for Databall under their own brand called, I don't know, Lead Management Systems R Us or something. And they were sending us leads, and every lead we were getting, we were like, oh, it's a current customer, reject it. We wouldn't be like that. We'd be like, what the fuck's going on? Our customers are wanting to leave. Yeah. Like, holy shit, ring them up. Like, what's going on? Why are they wanting to leave? They're looking around, whatever. But do you know what every single company does? Because obviously we're B2B, we're talking in the B2C arena. They go, we're not paying for that lead, reject it. The reality is, what you're going to do with this, your current customer has just come in from potentially a form, most likely a form that has nothing to do with you. So you're British Gas. They've come in from a form called Find Your New Energy Supplier That's Better Than British Gas. And the first thing you think isn't like, oh, we better do something about this. It's reject the lead. We're not going to pay for it. Like, that's mad. Yeah. It's weird. It's odd, right? Well, I'll tell you what I wrote down on this. I've got a piece, I don't know where I got this from. It says Investec on it, but it's a bit of paper's hand. Why are they wanting to leave you? Like, to me, that goes into customer success, and we're like, you've got to find out what the problem is. Yeah. Like, we've got a big problem here. Why are they wanting to leave? Or are they wanting something else? Is there some other service? So I don't know. Yeah, you're doing broadband, you've got a contract with them, and it turns out they want a much faster broadband rate, and you might still be able to help them. Can you actually upsell a product? You don't reject a lead for this. You actually do something about this. What are the problems this person has? What is it they want? If you want to squeeze the value out of every single lead, you don't actually reject current customers, because it comes back to what I wrote down, what I just said. Do you want to reject a lead or lose a customer? I know which one's a shitload more valuable, the customer. So you're going to reject a lead for like, I don't know, £10, or you're going to accept and go, we need to get in contact with these people. You've got to go into customer success and we need to find out what the problem is.
It's just fun. I mean, could it also be, I mean, that is the biggest thing to consider, but could it also just be that they're looking for something else, an additional, an upside? I don't know, was that depends on the industry, I suppose, but like, there's, that's considered too, that there could be further opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. Just... So they could upsell something, or they're looking to replace you. They want a different broadband provider. And rather than thinking we better do something about it, you think, oh no, yeah, just reject the lead because it's a current customer. It's like, it doesn't make any sense, mate.
It's really an interesting point. It's something I imagine loads of people have not thought about before.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Number 5, where are we?
So delivery. So this is delivering leads to a CRM, a dialer, ESP, something else. How many are responding or answering? When you're going to a dialer, if you're doing it in real time, what are the intent levels? Like, do they know you're going to be contacting them? If they do, what are the response levels like? If you're getting like a reasonably low DMC, decision maker contact, is it worth exploring doing booked appointments? Or if you can't do booked appointments and it's not available, do you call them immediately? Or if it's low intent, you can't get booked appointments because it's just not interested. So I think the way that you deliver leads and the way that you're actually going to be contacting them, if you want to squeeze more value out of every bit of data, you really need to be thinking about, if we do real-time leads on this sort of intent level, we get a 50% DMC rate, but we're getting the same when we're doing a much higher intent. And so what can we do to actually ensure that we're getting more and more people on the phone, or whatever the contact method is? It could be open rates in an email. Like, what changes can you make to actually ensure you're going to be speaking to more people? What most people do is just carry on doing the same thing they've always done. So it's either like, at best, they're doing speed to lead and they're calling them immediately. At worst, they're doing like not speed to lead, but they're not even exploring stuff like booking appointments and doing things like that, even though their decision maker contact rate could be 60%. Imagine you booked appointments and it went up to 80%. So it's just if you really want to explore squeezing the value out of every lead, these are the sort of things that you actually need to think about. If you can't get booked appointments 100%, you just do speed to lead. And I'd also say, if you're doing booked appointments, you need the booking to be ideally soon, because if you leave it like beyond a week, and we're talking like, when you do booked appointments, you're not going to do it about all products. It can only be as stuff like, it requires in-depth conversation and like, bit of heavy decision making and things. If you're getting low responses from calling leads under your current strategy, explore something else. Number 6 I've got is something we've done actually about, we did a podcast on this like months ago, could even been a year ago, I can't remember, which is getting as close to the sale as possible. So when you're generating leads, you can have a lead gen journey, right, that captures the bulk of the information that you're wanting in terms of like how to contact this person called that at this address with this telephone number. But what very few people do is then explore a potential journey beyond that. And what this is about is getting this person closer to the sale. So I know quite a few companies that do. I had a conversation with one yesterday who is a lead generator, and they'll put it into their own call center. And their idea is to get the sale 95% done. Then they pass it to the actual brand or the lead buyer, and they finish it off with the final 5%. So these leads are like extreme high value, high ticket stuff, like £500, £600, £700 a lead. And then it's just this 5-minute call or 5% finish right at the other end. But I also know some other people that generate a lead on the front end and then carry out all that heavy lifting on a lead gen form on the back end of it after the thank you page. And what they're doing is fact finding all this information that a agent would normally have to sit for like 20, 30 minutes asking people on the telephone call. So if you want to explore squeezing as much value out of the lead as possible, I'd 100% think about what's the journey post this bit of lead that we're collecting now. Could we put a purchase link if it's something they could buy online? Could we get an iframe and bang it on the back of a lead generator's page and then go through all these questions that we want to ask to get this lead as close to a sale as humanly possible? Because if they don't answer it, you've got the lead anyway, right?
So actually, how does that work, that bit? So the lead generator does that. Does the lead generator then sell it to the brand or send it to the brand and then sort of update once had the extra information? Or do they wait?
There's two ways of doing it. So one is the lead generator works with the lead seller works with the lead buyer on creating a customer journey that matches like whatever their sales process would normally be with, you find the questions out. And so the lead generator packages all that up. So they got the lead form, collect all the base information to create a lead, and then they offer this journey afterwards. And what it'd be is you'd say, okay, if someone just answers the like main bulk of details that we need, like in terms of contact method, and we've got their intent around the product and whatever, we'll give you £10. But if they answer all this other shit, we'll give you £50 because this, we've got like operational costs in terms of sales is done. We think the intent behind this individual is going to be much greater. We know from the answers that they've given because we dropped them off the journey otherwise that we can 100% be a great product or service for them. So that's one way of doing it. The lead generator sorts it out. The other way is the lead buyer creates the form and runs it as an iframe on a page that the lead generator has. So the lead generator gets the main bulk of the information. They've driven the traffic, however they're doing it, collect the data. When the user fills it in, they hit it like a thank you page, which really could be what we'll call an interstitial page. That is an iframe of the lead buyer's form. And technically, how you do it is that creates a UID on the front end, a unique identifier. You get the UID, and that's how you can basically do like a lead update to the original lead and populate all this additional information to it. So that's two ways of doing it, and you don't see many people doing it at all. Like,
it's very true. I mean, I guess this kind of delved into a slightly new area here, but I assume as well, if that works, you can massively save costs on actually the sales. It's like, it's not actually sort of gone off piece like that. That's the potential of that is huge.
100%, right? You've got, so you think about it, let's say your product takes 45 minutes to sell to a typical lead, and fucking 80% of that's fact finding, right? How many bedrooms you got, I don't know, whatever the questions are. If you can just eradicate that, you've just saved a load of time. You've got like this huge operational overhead of salespeople, fact finding that you can just reduce or put into buying more leads or whatever. But there's another thing beyond this, and it kind of comes back to what we were talking about like 10 minutes ago with personalizing journeys for people, and that, data is people. Like, everyone wants to buy in different ways. They want to express information about themselves in different ways. There is no like binary approach to this that's going to please everyone. So you want to like try and get every option in front of them. I might want to buy online and go through this journey and just see a link and I'm going to click it, but I've filled my details in. I've come through, you've got my details, and now I'm going to purchase the sale there. You might want to fill it in and just have someone call you because that's the easiest thing for you. I don't know, you're in the car or something, you're about to go on like a 40-minute drive, and you're like, I can just deal with this while I'm driving. Or someone else might be, well, I'm sat like with nothing to do, watching Love Island, and I'm going to fill a form in actually and do this while someone else is watching Love Island because I find it boring. Very, very few journeys like that. It's like one option and that's it. When the reality is, if you want to squeeze the value from every lead humanly possible, you give them a few different options.
We've talked about thank you pages before as well. I think just prime real estate, where very rarely they're used to any great effect, and they should be. So there's absolutely no reason to not try try something like that. There's no cost to it other than like how long it takes to stick a iframe on a page or whatever. Yeah, very interesting.
I'll give you one bonus one.
Okay.
I won't go too heavy duty into it because we could talk about this for hours, but just lead nurturing. Again, everyone follows this one size fits all approach if they do it at all. Like I can't contact this person. What happens? They just fall out of dialer cycles. Like, and no one thinks of like reinvigorating old relationships and why they came in things. But if you can respond to the user's expectations of like where they are in the journey, the intent level of the lead, how they came in, their sort of demographic in relation to your ideal customer profile and stuff, make it about solving their problems, not selling your software. Can you do progressive profiling to find out more information whether you could actually help them or not? So it's still lead nurturing is not massively used correctly, I wouldn't say, but there's a huge opportunity there if you want to squeeze every value, and we've got multiple podcasts about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think it kind of goes back to what I said at the start. Like the reason we said let's do this podcast is, as we speak to people at the moment, everyone's trying to find new ways to kind of get the absolute best return on any spend. They've been forced to do that, like everyone is. And lead nurturing is a great one to kind of go back and sort of say, right, this is no longer the days of just throwing money at things and seeing what sticks. It's just a case of like thinking, right, sure, they didn't convert now, but if we put them into the correct funnels, maybe they will do. Or even to go back into old ones and see if we can reignite. So I think that's definitely something we need to explore. I think it's interesting actually, as we've gone through those tactics, none of them require anything radically different. We're not sort of saying throw the playbook away and begin this whole new strategy of how you're buying leads or how you're going to sales. You're basically saying largely do the same thing as you do it. We talked about on the podcast, same basic principles, but just tweak certain little things throughout the whole process to get that extra value across the board. And I think, hopefully people will find that all those ideas are easily implementable and something they can look at and try and hopefully, squeeze the value and get more from their leads. But yeah, that was podcast episode 95, tactics to squeeze the value from every lead. Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.